Welcome back, friends, welcome back to the homestead. Today we're back at the raised bed. If you remember, we planted out a few videos back. We're a few weeks on now. It's June the 1st, the first day of summer. And in today's video, I wanted to look at some of the realities of growing and perhaps some of the disappointments. As you can see, the bed is looking a bit greener now, and we have some welcomed greenery and some less welcomed greenery. As someone once said, all weeds are just plants in the wrong place. Well, that may be, but there are some plants here that we don't want. And there are some unexpected guests as well, which I'll show in a minute. Of course, at the front here, if you can barely see me, are some weeds which I've deliberately left to grow to make a point really. But if you remember at the start, we took out that ground elder from the corner, but of course it was already around the outside, and that's grown up, and there are 2 or 3 other weeds as well. And so today's task is to sort this bed out a bit. We need to remove the weeds, cut down the greenery at the front, the weeds, and give some breathing space to some of these. And let's talk through what's happened with each vegetable that we planted here. So I think first of all, let's get on with tidying these weeds up, and then we can look at the rest. Now of course you may choose to use a strimmer, but ours is rather large, and it's designed for large bush or forest use, so it's rather overkill for these little weeds. So I'm just using a pair of garden scissors or shears. I've always got a compost bucket on hand to put these weeds in. So nothing goes to waste. Okay, so let's take a look at what has happened and what's going on in the bed. Now, just to recap, if you remember, we planted spinach here, radishes here, carrots here, Swiss chard here, lettuce, Lola Rossa lettuce here, and some pak choi here. So the day after we planted and made the video, I came out in the morning to check that the bed was all okay, and I discovered that a mole had rampaged through the bed, through several sections, and made a complete mess. Now, I think he went sort of up and down the carrots, across, past the lettuces, because you can see this trail of lettuces where the seeds have been dragged across, and has been back a few times since. In fact, you can see here damage from the last 2 or 3 days. Now, I know why the moles are coming back. As I said in the other video, this is lovely soil. It's full of life, and life means food for moles, particularly worms. And so it keeps coming back. Big disappointment the next day to discover that. However, all is not lost. Now, the carrots have not come up. That's disappointing, but it's not a big problem. They were early carrots, and there's 2 types of carrots, there's early and lates. And so I can sow some late carrot seeds to get a crop of it later on. Of the Swiss chard, only a handful have come up. 2, 3, 4, 5, I think there's one up there, 6. You could argue that was disappointing for a whole row of seeds. However, for a family of perhaps 4 or 5, you only really need a plant per person, 1.5 plants per person, providing you're not harvesting on a daily basis. That will be great. So we can space those out, and we can let those grow on to maturity. They'll be quite big. Once they grow up, they'll be quite big and bushy like this. And you just harvest from the outside and it will regrow. So the radish have come up lovely. As I said, they're a very forgiving plant. And they come up nice, but clearly we need to thin these out a bit. And they've been attacked by the dreaded flea beetle. I was expecting that. We had a lot of flea beetle damage here last year. In fact, I almost wanted it because I wanted to demonstrate on the video. They're tiny little beetles, thus the name flea beetle, and they jump about when you get your finger near them, and they make these holes. They're particularly damaging to young plants because it stops them from growing, but once they grow a bit and they get going, then it's not so much of a problem. And once these radishes have thinned out, they will go on to full maturity, no problem at all. So it initially looked quite disappointing, but not a problem. I used one of these, experimented with these fly sheets, which caught a lot, and I must admit the damage did subside a lot after I put this up. And also an old time method, we sprinkled some ash onto the leaves, and one of those two has done the job, because most of the flea beetles have gone now. Spinach, quite happy with that, come out nicely, starting to grow up nicely. Spinach around midsummer will probably bolt to seed anyway, so we want to make the most of this crop now. You can just see some of that groundnut come back up on the inside. And there's various weeds around, you can see. I think, if I'm not wrong, these are marigolds, and there's perhaps a poppy or two. There's a lot of marigolds self-seeded in the garden just behind us here. The lettuce has done very well. It's now time for this to prick some of these out. They're a tiny bit too big for that, but they'll be fine. If they were starters, then they'll be about this size, and we'll spread those out evenly to fill up some of this space, and we'll have a really nice harvest of Dolorosa lettuce. We've not succumbed to any snails or slugs, which can be a problem, but we've kept on top of that. And pak choi, nothing's happened, but it's too late now for pak choi. Just have to accept that and move on, really. So yeah, initially disappointing and looked like a bit of a struggle, but with a weed and a sort out, there'll be lots of food from this bed, so I'm pleased about that. So let's get on and do that weeding, and let's go from there. Now, I'm quite happy weeding this little area by hand, but for areas where you've got a slightly more clearer area, or you know that you're not likely to damage anything you've planted, you might want to use a tool. Now, I find traditional hoes quite heavy-handed, a bit clumsy, and so I've made these two wire hoes, which are a lot more popular these days, and these are great for, I've predominantly made these for the market garden, where everything's planted in straight rows with a fixed distance, and you know exactly the distance between the two rows. And so I've made these two tools for different types of vegetables with different spacings, and I can simply run down the row quite quickly with the wire, and it just takes down about 1 centimetre of the soil, just slides through, and then it will take up any very tiny weeds and disturb the soil surface to make sure they don't take root, or even disturb them before they even show them. So it's kind of pre-weeding almost. Very efficient way of keeping the weeds down. Now, there's no such thing as a weed-free garden, but there is something that looks like weed-free, and by keeping on top of weeds, you can keep it that way. And obviously the strength then goes into the things that you want to grow rather than the weeds. So these are very handy. Like I say, I made it for a piece of wire and a copper wire, and then I've taped it around a stick, and it's as simple as that, really. These, I've seen these on the internet for about, well, they're predominantly in America, $40 or $50, so it's, you know, 30, 40 pounds for something that I made in 5 minutes for free. So, and it's a fantastic tool. I would use these over any heavy hose any day. So that's our weeding now done, and you can see the bed's looking a lot more tidy. So there's our 2 potato plants I mentioned. Here's the lettuce, and you can see where the mould had gone across there. There's our solo patch of Swiss chard. Here's our radish and our spinach. So what we need to do now is what I'm going to do, I think, is take our Swiss chard here, and then plant them here in a square block, And then I'm going to take some of these lettuce and then plant these out here in a square block. Leave plenty of room for the potato because that will grow big with some big leaves which will shade out some area, so we'll leave some room for that. And then some of the other lettuce I will take over to the market garden and grow there as well. These Lollo Rosso lettuce will grow into quite a big ball, so you won't need many to fill this room up. Okay, let's get on. And also, of course, completely forgot, we need to thin out the radishes as well. So I think I'm going to do that first, actually. So these radishes have already started forming their root balls, and they're quite small at the moment. And I'm just going to go through this row and pick out the ones which I'm roughly going to pick out every other one, but I'm going to try and pick out ones which look less healthy. So leave the healthiest ones in there that are most likely to survive, and then that should give some room for those to become full size and be tasty to eat. So let's do that. So there's our radishes done, and here's 4 that were of a half decent size that I will keep, perhaps slice into a salad. But the rest will grow up to a nice size, probably about the size of a small wine cork or something. These are French radishes, so they're longer rather than the round type. So now we need to get on and plant out the lettuce and the Swiss chard. So now I'm going to remove the Swiss chard. Remove those carefully. There we go. And then just carefully pull these apart. One, two, there's a weed. 3, 4, and then 5. And then I'll plant these here. 1, just squeeze it in so the roots are touching the soil. We'll give them a good water as well in a minute. 2, about a hand's width apart. 3, squeeze those in. Don't want that little pest. A bit further over, there we are. And 4 in there. And 5 over here. Perfect. And there's our 5 Swiss chard. And we'll give those a good watering at the end. So we'll do the same with our salads. Take some out. And I'm going to divide this area up a bit. You want a similar spacing, sort of 15 centimetres a hand width. So you want them 15 centimetres away from the Swiss chard, 2, 3, and then it's the potatoes, and then I'm not worried about being too close to the radish because they'll be gone by the time these become too big. One line down there, and another line where they are. So we can plant 9 here. We'll remove this block as well and plant them a bit further over. In fact, we can keep drawing this line over here. And we could draw some up here where the Swiss chard finish. Okay, let's do the same thing again. So we've got one here. Let's break up this block gently. 2, get one more. There. 11. And now we'll get those planted in the ground. You can do this, just prod your finger in just to make a hole. Or you may have a dibber from a piece of wood or something. You can push them well in. That's no problem. Of course, we did have lovely compost all on top of there, but the mole has done a great job in removing that. But it's still in the soil somewhere, it's still good, and the worms will be eating that and making hummus. So that's all done. And we've got our lettuces here. So they'll all come up to nice little balls, and then we'll pick the leaves from the outside and they'll regrow. But as the leaves grow new in the inside, the outside leaves become available to harvest. So there's the replanting finished. As you can see, we've got a nice grid of lettuce and our chard. And we've still got lots of lettuce plants left that we can plant out. In fact, what we'll probably do is share those. Some will go in the field, like I said, in the market garden, and the rest we'll just share with friends. They'll be very grateful. That's one of the great joys of gardening, is swapping both seedlings and seeds to plant different things the following year. Good. Of course, the last thing to do is to give it a good watering. Doesn't matter how much water really, you won't drown them. We already know this is nice loose soil with lots of compost in it and on top of it, so there's no problem there. The water really needs to get around the roots and surround it and make sure the soil is tight around. So here we are with our finished planted out bed. If you remember back at the start of the video, I was telling you about my woes about this bed, how we were attacked by the mole and the flea beetle, and there was lots of weeds, and we've tidied it up very quickly, and we've given some thought about how we can make the most of what we got. We were blessed with a lot of lettuce, and of course we've got our bonus potatoes as well, not to mention all our radish and our spinach. Some great nutritious crops there. So I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you for watching. If you've not subscribed, then please do subscribe. Give us a thumbs up if you like the video, and please do leave a comment. Tell us what you like and what you don't like. In our next video, I'm going to be looking at a different way of growing things called no dig. And that should be really interesting actually. So I look forward to seeing you in that next video. Bye for now.